All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb Thursday afternoon. Make sure you give us a follow on Stadium. Make sure you give us any of your questions, comments, whatever, to Doug. Direct them directly to Douglas, please, not to me. Listen, we had a big night last night. Kentucky was shorthanded. They end up losing at home to a Florida Gators team that sorely needed a win. We have a Big Ten coach going absolutely ballistic at the end of a game, and you don't see it very often, but hyping up the opposing crowd in West Lafayette. We have a Memphis team in a free fall right now. We'll get to all of it, but let's start in Lexington with a Kentucky team that, again, was without DJ Wagner, without Justin Edwards, and Florida comes in and gets a much-needed resume win for Todd Golden and the Gators. Walter Clayton hit a huge three in regulation to force overtime. Florida wins in overtime. Tyrese Samuel was phenomenal. Zion Pullen was really good. And you know what? Like, it just shows you that, yes, this Kentucky team that a lot of people had as the third best team in the country a week or so ago, they're as vulnerable as anybody. Will get to Purdue. They were vulnerable last night. UConn last night looked vulnerable against Providence, even at home. Nobody is safe right now in college basketball. But again, how big was this one first for the Florida Gators and Todd Golden, Doug? To me, this one was significant because their best win had come against Mississippi State at home, right? They didn't have that same, well, they had a similar record to Kentucky. They didn't have a resume win. Now, whether they got it with a full-strength Kentucky team or not, I don't think the committee's going to look at them being without Wagner and Edwards and say, hey, we're going to put an asterisk next to this one. That was a big win for the Gators.
Gigantic, especially considering, Kentucky came down there and beat them at their place, and then you factor in also, Florida's ability to come back. Granted, Georgia's not great, but it's a come from behind win and win there. If you can win on the road, you're likely going to belong in the NCAA tournament. And for people who are trying to figure out, like, okay, so why did it take Florida so long? Remember, every name you named that played well last night is from a different school, right? So it takes a while. So, yes, you have the benefit of older players, but, you have one guy stepping up from UC Riverside in terms of level. Tyrese Samuel over from Seton Hall, right? Walter Clayton comes in as well. He was at Iona. So you have all these different guys from different levels coming together, and Todd Golden's starting to figure it out. But you're right. For Kentucky, this is classic freshman team or younger team where you win a game on the road, you're not supposed to win, and you lose a game at home, you're not supposed to lose. Very par for the course.
Yeah.
Yes.
We knew this was going to happen all year. Here's my one takeaway from Kentucky last night.
Okay.
They finally found a big. Because their bigs have been, Big Z is now kind of little Z because he hasn't really done anything since that first game in those first 5-10 minutes. Aaron Bradshaw has looked great for a stretch of a few minutes, but then he's kind of come down to earth. Ugonna Onyenso last night was really good, and he's the guy to me that has the best shot of making an impact for them other than Trey Mitchell. And Trey Mitchell is a scoring big, but not an athletic dude, not a guy who's going to be a rim protector. That's what this team needs defensively, desperately, Doug. And Onyenso last night, he gave him a force on the glass, and he gave him a force down low in terms of, again, impacting the game from a shot blocking and shot altering perspective.
I agree. And yes, Big Z is not what he was in his debut, but I think that, we're seeing this up, down, and he's still valuable because now you have at least two guys with size and the ability to defend the rim. Onyenso just gives you, he doesn't require much. That's the other thing. He doesn't require the ball. He doesn't require sets. He doesn't require just go play and go get me the rebounds and defend the rim. So, yeah, I mean, it's actually a really high basketball IQ find from you, Jeff, that I'm not diminishing your normal basketball. No. I'm just saying what happens when you lose is everybody thinks everything is bad when you lose. And when you win, everything is good when you win. And that's not always the case. For Florida, I think it is the case. You can only take away positives here. They want to play with pace. They did so. I thought they exposed Kentucky's weaknesses defensively. But for Kentucky, yeah, the takeaway isn't all that bad. Yes, they were down some bodies, but we know Wagner's been up and down this year anyway. And it wasn't like Shepard was bad. We see what Shepard looks like in starting minutes. Pretty spectacular.
Yes.
So and Dillingham was Dillingham.
Yeah.
Right. So and Dillingham was Dillingham. So come off the bench and give you 20. So some of it's the other guys on that team. But I'm with you. If you have to be able to defend the rim and rebound. You got to have also. I like that Big Z can, at least for short periods of time, stretch the floor as well. So I'm still not out on Kentucky. Again, they're not a favorite. The favorites are Purdue and UConn. Those are the two. Maybe Houston you put in there is like the quasi one. Then there's that next group. I absolutely think Kentucky is part of that next group.
Purdue didn't look like a favorite last night for most of the game. Okay, they're at home at Mackey. They're supposed to blow out a Northwestern team that had beaten them earlier in the season in a huge upset. Instead, they are down late. Zach Edey can't make free throws. He's a 72% free throw shooter this season. They eventually force overtime and win the game, but the story, Douglas, might be twofold. Chris Collins's rant, I guess you can call it, because it was one of those, I don't know if I've ever seen it before, right? Like, he's upset, obviously, in the foul differential here, which was absolutely insane. It was the largest foul differential in the Big Ten in 25 years and the second largest this season, 46-8. 46-8. So Collins kind of went berserk, and then I think he realized he was going berserk, and he saw Matt Pater, and he kind of gave him a hug. And then he went over and he was leaving after he got tossed, and he saw Zach Edey, and he gave him a big handshake. And it was like,
well,
and then he started riling up the crowd. It was awesome. Before I get to your reaction, Doug, let's hear what Chris Collins had to say after the game.
Don't know if I've ever seen a box score like that, honestly. I've been, you guys have been doing this too. A lot of you guys have been covering. I don't know if you've ever seen a disparity like that in a Big Ten game, which is like Purdue. Obviously, we're fouling that much. I mean, I feel like we're aggressive, though, too. I felt like, Boo Buie doesn't shoot a free throw in the game. It's kind of crazy. But that's how the game's called. and you got to live with it. That's why I was so proud of my guys. If you're down 50 at the free throw line and you have a shot at the buzzer. So, you almost have to play perfect.
Doug, I expected Chris Collins last night. The only thing he didn't do was slap the floor. I wanted him to get down and slap the floor after all that. But it was entertaining, and I'm sure he was frustrated, as he should be, because, again, that foul differential, I don't care what's going on in the game. That's insane. That's an insane one.
Well, listen, there's a couple different parts to it. First, the reason that Chris can get away with this, get away with it or whatever, is he's a great dude. Okay? Like last year when they were talking about firing Northwestern, everybody's like, do we have to fire him? We don't want to fire him, but we just kind of are stuck. And then Boo Buie, took over, and, Ty Berry, as good as he was last year, he was that good last night. Got them to the NCAA tournament, and now he's on solid footing. And I think the reason he went over to say something, to Paint, and he went to say something to Edey is, I don't think his issue's not with Paint with Edey. It's with the officiating. How do we guard this guy? Now, the flip side to it is Northwestern very well could have won last night. They did beat them in Evanston. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot of positive takeaways you can have.
But can you? Okay, I agree you can have a lot of positive takeaways, but ultimately they win that game in Mackey. That's as good of a resume win as you're going to have all season long. And now you're talking about maybe not being a lock tournament team, but pretty damn close with sweeping Purdue, it would be hard if you're on the bubble at the end of the day to leave Chris Collins and Northwestern out. I think that ultimately is what had Chris Collins so frustrated. We're that close at Mackey. We get hosed by the refs in his mind, and we're still right there. We should have beaten them in regulation. We still had a shot a little bit in overtime, and yeah, like we just didn't get a good whistle.
Can I just one thing? Braden Smith was freaking awesome last night. I mean, he was
awesome.
And look, Boo Boo was great, and Barnheiser was good late, and so was Ty Berry for Northwestern. I'm not trying to diminish, but there are times in which we're critical of Braden Smith, and granted, like Boo Boo's older. Well, Boo Boo's older, but he's not a freak athlete. Sometimes that's what kind of rattles him, is when he goes in there and there's that real athleticism inside. But I mean, man, did he make some incredible plays, creating shots for others, for himself. And look, this is the challenge for Edey, is will he get those calls when they're in the NCAA tournament?
Right.
Because there's a lot of like 50-50. You have to meet force with force. And that's Northwestern basically just puts body upon body upon body on him, and really try and be physical with him, and he's physical back. And last night in Mackey, obviously they got every call. Are they going to get every call once we get to the first or second weekend in March? I don't know the answer to that, and that's one of the things that's been kind of unsettling for Purdue, is things that they can normally do in league. And this is a big thing. This was how it worked in football. I believe how it works in basketball. To win in the Big Ten, it takes a different skill set in many ways than it takes to win in the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten is a much more physical league. They all have these big, burly centers. You have to, and if you want to win the league, you got to be able to guard that guy, right? You always have to guard a 7-footer from Purdue that can play and score, and they know how to, they just keep pooping out 7-footers. But nationally, you don't have that. It's very, very different. And the game is faster, is more athletic at the wings, more athletic at the guards. And so, again, how you beat Purdue and how you win the Big Ten is not how you win nationally. And I think football, Michigan made that adjustment with a lot of their speed defensively while still being conservative offensively. Again, this is football. Basketball, it's the same way. Can you defend the overall athleticism and the fact that most teams want to spread you out a lot more than Big Ten teams do?
So Purdue poops out 7-footers. Memphis is just pooping out right now. They were number 10 in the country 2 weeks ago, Doug. They've now lost 4 straight games to sub-100 teams, okay? It started with USF, then at Tulane, then UAB, and last night it went to the depths of despair, right? I mean, they lost to Rice at home. Their 4th straight. Rice was the worst team in the league. They've been bad. This was a Memphis team that 2 weeks ago we were talking about, man, they could make a run in the NCAA tournament. Now, I think their net went from 15 or 20 to 75 in the span of 4 games. Have you ever seen this? Ever? In 2 weeks, a team going from top 10 to NIT, and can they get this mojo back?
I didn't buy them when they were 10th in the country. Part of it was Quinterly bailed them out 2 consecutive home games. And if you watch those games, you're like, man, they're not great. And Quinterly's bailing them out. And then they've gone on this losing streak after 2 straight kind of games where he literally bailed them out of losing bad home games. So do I think they can get it back? I don't. I think Penny's searching for his 5 best players, searching for a rotation. You got older guys that came in for kind of one last, whether it's payday or one last kind of run towards the NCAA tournament, and they're not having the season they want. This team appears to be fissuring, and it's really, really hard to get back. Now, you could say, hey, they're in a league where they have better players than many of the teams in the league. But again, they've been struggling against the bottom of the league. And one thing the bottom of the league has, you take Rice, for example, they're not losing. Those aren't guys that have any sort. One of the things that the portal does, and the idea of getting money in NIL, is some of these teams at the bottom, the guys keep fighting because one, they want to stick around, or two, they need something good to put on tape in order to go to their next school. So it's kind of an interesting one. Whereas you have Memphis, you have a lot of guys that have played a lot of basketball, but how many of those guys that have come from other places have played winning basketball? It's a big question.
That's a great point.
Do they know how to win? You know, you're like, well, he's leading scorer. Every bad team has a leading scorer. So, you know, Quinterly coming off the bench now surprises me. Tells me there's something. He's got too many guards there. Something's wrong there. You know, a 6-year point guard who was McDonald's All-American, kind of a borderline pro, like fighting for minutes. Like, I don't know. There's got to be some fissures there that are hard to close up.
Memphis will try to get back on track Saturday at home against a struggling Wichita State team. All right, still to come, Goodman versus Gottlieb. We'll check in on the reigning Women's Player of the Year, Caitlyn Clark, who made history last night in Evanston. Plus, a couple other games last night with big implications. We'll discuss next. All right, Iowa women's basketball tweeted out this graphic last night of Caitlyn Clark congratulating her on becoming the Big Ten's all-time leading scorer. Clark surpassed former Ohio State player Kelsey Mitchell. Clark also became the NCAA's second leading scorer ever with 3,424 points and trails Kelsey Plum by just, 103 points. And Doug, I'm actually going to their game. 5 games from now, they play in Bloomington. All right, 5 games. So do the math. So they have 4 games. She's got to get 103 points. She's averaging 32 points a game. I need her to have an off game. I need her to have an off game. and it's not going to happen. She scores like 30 every.
Can you name?
Every.
Okay, so Kelsey Plum, Washington, right? University of Washington. Kelsey Mitchell. That is interesting that the number 1, number 2 scorers were both named Kelsey. I had no idea. Who would have known? So Kelsey Mitchell was Ohio State. Is that right? Did I just listen to you read that correctly? Jackie Stiles was Missouri State, right? Back when it was Southwest Missouri State. She was a bucket at Missouri State. And then Brittany Griner. I couldn't pick the rest out of a lineup. I apologize.
All right. So Caitlyn,
what I love about Caitlyn is it's a thing. Did you see the crowd last night?
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing. It's awesome. And again, like, this is, you and I are pretty much lockstep in how NIL is really pay for play, and in many ways, it's not the transfer portal, it's the ability to transfer and not send out more, which I think is throwing the fabric of what in many ways college basketball is about. But NIL does have some positive things. And I don't know what Caitlyn Clark would have done had it been pre-NIL era. But I can tell you it's far more profitable for her to play in college than it is for her to go to the WNBA, and we get a chance to experience this. Like, it's a thing. So do I think it's, like, women's basketball is in any way going to get equal with the popularity of the men's game? No. Okay. But again, you have somebody who people are captivated by, and she continues to deliver, and the team is fun, and you feel like, hey, it's going to be them, South Carolina, Baylor, LSU, and maybe a couple others fighting for, like, I'm kind of into this thing. I watched the South Carolina LSU game. I watched her games last year, and she's must-see TV. She seems to deliver because she has the shot-making ability that we've come to really appreciate on the men's side.
Yeah, it seems like when I'm watching her, I feel like I'm watching the female version of Steph Curry, to be honest. That's kind of what I feel like. I just feel like she can shoot it from anywhere. She's an elite passer, got great court vision. She's got all these different moves. She's got flair to her game, and she knows it. And, they both celebrate. So, all right, let's get back to a couple games last night that had major implications. One of which was number 24 Alabama dug themselves a huge hole in Athens, right? They started the game down 17-2, Doug. They were down big at halftime, but man, second half, what they did was, to me, they got out and ran, which obviously is a NATO team, but they drove the ball. Like, to me, they were driving the ball at the bucket instead of just settling for threes. And obviously they were better defensively, and you're going to be better defensively when you make shots, right? That's the other part. Like, you make shots, you have the ability to set your defense. The first half, they didn't do that. They gave up a lot of points in transition. But I think Alabama is a team that it kind of shows with this game, Doug. You don't know what to expect with the Crimson Tide from half to half.
Well, what they've done is, and I talked to Nate a little bit about this after the Auburn game, which is they've gone, when they need to score, they go Grant Nelson strictly at the 5 and not have him play kind of in the post. They're playing 5 out. And that's what allows for the driving lanes. And then he hit a couple of threes. He was frankly overwhelmed against Auburn. They were too athletic, too strong for him. And, he shot an air ball. He just didn't look confident. He made free throws late and kind of helped them seal the game. But in this game, I thought Nelson really helped them with his ability to space the floor. That opened up the driving lanes for Mark Sears, who's got just a great first step. So, but to me, it's the outscoring a team on the road 58-35 in the second half. 58-35. That's nuts. And it's not a season saver, but that would have gone down. That would not have been a good loss for Bama, especially considering the struggles on the road.
Yeah, their metrics are so good. I mean, that's the difference. So Boise State is a game you wanted to really talk about because it's a fun storyline too. I mean, Max Rice feels like he's been there playing for Leon, his dad, forever, and they go into the pit. And this is one you don't really think they're going to be able to get because New Mexico is about as tough at the pit as anybody is on their home court. especially this year, because the Lobos have really good guards. Well, Max Rice goes in and goes for a career-high 35. And honestly, Doug, a game and a performance that might end up getting the Bronx in the NCAA tournament and sending out Max Rice kind of the right way in his final season playing for his dad. Really cool moment for the duo.
How about he shot an air ball his first shot, and then he drops 35, right? Shoots an air ball, drops 35. Gigantic win, especially for Boise State, because New Mexico hadn't lost at home. Their metrics are great. And Boise just dropped one to Utah State. I think it was in overtime over the weekend. So this kind of erases that a little bit. And Boise had a slow start to the season. What a win in the wild, wild Mountain West. I would not have thought New Mexico, if they were going to lose at home, would beat a Boise State, to be honest with you.
All right, we have a viewer question, Doug. It comes from JJB, and he asks, if Arizona is going to win the Pac-12, which everybody kind of assumes they're going to win the Pac-12, who comes in second and third in the league? I will say this. He thinks Arizona State. I would say it's going to be some combo of Colorado and Oregon. I trust those two teams, talent-wise, coaching-wise, all of it. Colorado's got the most talent, maybe of anybody, I don't want to say in the league, but besides Arizona. And I think, again, to me, Oregon, Dana Altman, they're healthy. I'll take the Ducks.
Well, also, I mean, if we're judging Arizona State, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games, and they still have to go to Colorado and Utah. SC and UCLA aren't terrible road trips, but you still have some tough road games. I would go with Colorado, and yeah, Oregon, or potentially Washington State. That's a surprise team in the league.
All right, thanks for joining us. Goodman versus Gottlieb. We'll see you tomorrow.